Motivation is like the spark of a match, bright, exciting, and full of energy, but it fades quickly if it doesn't catch on something deeper. Purpose, however, is the steady flame that continues to burn, guiding your path when the initial excitement has long worn off. The truth is, anyone can feel motivated for a day or a week. You might watch an inspiring video, read a powerful quote, or listen to an energetic speaker and feel like you're ready to take on the world. But what happens when life throws you challenges? When the road stretches farther than you expected, when the applause stops, and when no one else is watching, that's when purpose steps in. Purpose is not about how you feel in the moment. It's about the meaning behind your actions, the reason you endure when it's easier to quit. It's about having a why so strong that even the toughest storms can't pull you off course. To truly understand the difference between fleeting motivation and lasting purpose. Think about the life of Bayard Rustin. He wasn't the loudest voice in the room, nor the one constantly in the spotlight, but his purpose was unshakable. Born in 1912, Rustin grew up in a world that was far from kind to someone like him, an African-American man, openly gay and deeply committed to challenging injustice at a time when both racial and social barriers were firmly in place. For many, these obstacles would have been enough to retreat into silence. But Rustin's purpose was greater than personal comfort. His mission was rooted in the belief that all people deserve dignity, equality, and freedom. That belief became his inner engine, driving him forward regardless of how hostile the world around him could be. Rustin's story is a perfect example of what happens when you build your life on purpose rather than momentary motivation. In the early years of his activism, he endured constant discrimination, not only from the system he opposed, but sometimes from his own allies. Even within the civil rights movement, some tried to sideline him because of his sexuality, fearing it would draw criticism. A person driven solely by motivation might have walked away, but Rustin's sense of purpose was like an anchor. It held him steady when the waves crashed. He didn't show up for recognition. He showed up because he knew his work mattered. He wasn't concerned about immediate rewards. He was concerned about the change his efforts could create in the long run. Think about that for a moment. How many times have you started something, learning a skill, starting a business, changing a habit only to stop when the initial excitement wore off? It's not because you didn't care. It's because excitement without a deeper reason can't withstand the test of time. Bayard Rustin didn't have the luxury of giving up when it was hard. For him, every step was guided by a commitment bigger than himself. He organized protests, trained activists in nonviolent resistance, and stood firmly against oppression even when his presence was unwelcome. He knew his work might not always be celebrated in the moment, but he also knew history would remember the results. The most striking example of his purposeful drive was his role in organizing the Prairie 1963 March on Washington. While Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was the face of that historic event, Rustin was the strategist who made it happen. It wasn't an easy task. Coordinating over 250,000 people in a peaceful demonstration required meticulous planning, immense patience, and resilience against political pressures. At the time, Rustin faced attacks on his character from multiple directions. Yet, he didn't allow the noise to derail him, because his purpose was crystal clear: to help create a world where freedom and equality were realities, not just ideals. That purpose was enough to keep him moving forward when the odds seemed insurmountable. This is where we can draw our own lesson. If you only rely on bursts of motivation, you will always be starting over. But if you anchor yourself to a clear, meaningful purpose, you can push through the seasons when nothing seems to be going your way. Purpose allows you to see beyond today's struggles and recognize the greater significance of your efforts. It shifts your focus from how hard the work feels in the moment to why the work is worth doing in the first place. Motivation says, I'll do it if I feel like it. Purpose says, I'll do it because it matters. Every great achievement in history has been built on this principle. The people who change the world don't always have the loudest voices, the biggest resources, or the easiest paths. What they do have is a purpose so deeply rooted that it becomes part of their identity. For Bayard Rustin, that purpose was equality and justice. For you, it might be creating something that helps others, building a legacy for your family, mastering a craft, or making the world a little better than you found it. Whatever it is, when you align your actions with it, you tap into a power that no external challenge can break. Purpose doesn't just give you strength, it gives you clarity. When you know why you're doing something, every decision becomes easier. Distractions lose their grip on you because you can see the difference between what is important and what is merely urgent. You stop chasing every passing opportunity and start focusing on the ones that align with your mission. That's the kind of mindset that keeps you going when the applause fades, when the excitement disappears, and when the path feels lonely. In the same way Rustin worked tirelessly behind the scenes without demanding recognition, you too can find satisfaction in the quiet victories, the moments no one else notices, but that bring you closer to your ultimate vision. Purpose-driven action doesn't always come with instant gratification, but it always leads to deeper fulfillment. And when you look back years from now, you'll see that the days you kept going despite the lack of motivation were the days that truly defined your journey. When you live with purpose, something powerful happens. You stop being controlled by the ups and downs of your emotions. Motivation can rise and fall like the tide. Some mornings you wake up feeling inspired. Other days you struggle just to take the first step. But purpose acts like the compass that points you in the right direction no matter how rough the seas become. It gives you a reason to keep moving forward even when the journey feels exhausting. And if there's anyone whose life illustrates this truth, it's Bayard Rustin. His legacy reminds us that meaningful change is not born from bursts of inspiration, but from a relentless commitment to a cause that matters. Rustin's work was not glamorous, and much of it happened far from cameras or public praise. He was the strategist, the organizer, the quiet force that made great movements possible. This is an important lesson for all of us. In a world obsessed with instant results and visible success, we often overlook the immense value of steady, consistent effort. Rustin understood that the civil rights movement was not a sprint. It was a marathon that required discipline, patience, and courage. He wasn't chasing applause. He was pursuing justice. That distinction made all the difference. In the years before the March on Washington, Rustin faced setbacks that would have ended the efforts of someone relying solely on motivation. He was arrested multiple times for his activism, targeted for his personal life, and sometimes pushed aside by people he respected. But rather than retreat, he used those challenges as fuel to refine his strategies and strengthen his resolve. He believed deeply in the philosophy of nonviolence, not as a tactic of convenience, but as a way of life. This belief became his unshakable foundation. Purpose, like Rustin's, does something remarkable. It allows you to endure hardship without losing heart. There will always be days when progress feels invisible, when it seems like your efforts aren't making a difference. But if you're anchored in purpose, you understand that each step, no matter how small, is a building block toward your greater goal. You stop measuring success solely by immediate results and start valuing the long-term impact of your actions. Think about your own goals. Maybe you want to write a book, build a business, change your career, or improve your health. In the beginning, motivation is high. You can picture the end result so clearly that it excites you. But after the first wave of enthusiasm, the reality sets in. The work is hard, progress is slow, and challenges pop up unexpectedly. This is the exact point where most people give up. They assume the lack of excitement means they've lost their passion. But passion is not always about how you feel. It's about what you're willing to commit to, even when the feelings fade. Rustin never mistook difficulty for failure. He knew the path to justice would be filled with resistance, and he accepted that as part of the journey. He wasn't just chasing the dream, he was fulfilling a duty. That sense of duty kept him organizing, training, and advocating long after the initial momentum of the movement had slowed. You became the kind of leader who didn't need constant praise to keep going. The work itself was the reward. And that's another key truth about living with purpose. It turns the process into a source of fulfillment. When your actions align with your deeper why, even the difficult days have meaning. You stop living for the weekend, for the finish line, or for external validation, and you start finding value in the very act of moving toward your goal. It becomes less about getting there, and more about becoming the person capable of getting there. We often think of purpose as something grand or distant, but it doesn't have to be. It can start with a simple commitment to doing the right thing, even when it's inconvenient. For Rustin, that meant showing up for countless meetings, drafting plans, mentoring younger activists, and working tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure that protests remain organized and peaceful. He didn't wait for the perfect moment to act, he acted, again and again, until the moments he helped create shaped history. Living with purpose also changes the way you handle criticism. Rustin knew that no matter how well he planned, or how pure his intentions, there would always be people who opposed him or misunderstood his work. But criticism loses its power when your goal is not to please everyone, but to serve your mission. Instead of wasting energy defending himself, Rustin invested his energy into building the movement. This is a lesson many of us need today. You can't control what people say about you, but you can control whether those words distract you from what truly matters. Imagine if you approached your goals with that same resilience. What if you decided that temporary discomfort was just part of the process, not a sign that you should stop? What if you stopped waiting to feel motivated and instead built your days around your purpose? You would find that progress, no matter how slow, becomes inevitable. Because when your actions are tied to something meaningful, quitting is no longer an option. It simply doesn't fit the person you've chosen to be. The life of Bayard Rustin shows that the greatest contributions often come from those who keep going long after others have given up. He didn't need to be in the spotlight to change history. His purpose was his fuel, his map, and his anchor. And that's why, decades later, his work still inspires us. The world may not always reward you immediately for your persistence, but the impact you create will outlast any momentary recognition. Purpose is the quiet strength that keeps you steady when emotions waver. It's the reminder that the hard days are not wasted. They're forging your character, sharpening your skills, and proving to yourself that you can endure more than you thought possible. And in the end, it's not the burst of motivation that will define your legacy. It's the years of consistent, purpose-driven action that will speak the loudest. There's a certain freedom that comes when you commit to living by purpose instead of chasing motivation. You stop waking up wondering if today you feel like it, because your actions are no longer dependent on mood. They're tied to something far more unshakable. Purpose strips away the excuses that keep so many people stuck. It gives you a reason to take the next step, even when the path is unclear. And if you need proof of how powerful that can be, just look again at Bayard Rustin's life. By the time the March on Washington took place in August 1963, Rustin had already been working for decades toward equality. This wasn't the work of someone who had bursts of enthusiasm every now and then. It was the life of a man whose every decision was guided by his why. On the day of the march, more than 250,000 people gathered peacefully in the Capitol. It was one of the largest demonstrations in American history, and it played a pivotal role in the passage of the Civil Rights Act. Yet, despite orchestrating the logistics for such a massive event, Rustin didn't stand at the podium as the headline speaker. He didn't demand recognition. That's because his reward wasn't in the spotlight. It was in knowing he had fulfilled his purpose. That's the kind of focus you need to carry into your own life. We live in a culture that glorifies quick wins and instant validation. But if you're only chasing motivation, you'll burn out before you reach the finish line. Purpose asks you to take the longer, steadier road. It's less glamorous, but it's infinitely more rewarding. Rustin understood that real change takes time. It takes years of showing up, often without thanks. And in your own journey, whether you're working toward personal growth, building a dream, or helping others, the same truth applies. The most meaningful results will come after countless days of quiet, deliberate effort. Purpose is also what gives you resilience when life throws the unexpected your way. Rustin knew that setbacks weren't signs to stop. They were tests of his resolve. In one instance, he was advised to step back from leadership roles to avoid controversy, even though his skills were unmatched. For many, that would have been a crushing blow. But Rustin simply shifted his focus to where he could still make an impact. He poured himself into mentorship, strategy, and coordination. That's what purpose does. It keeps you moving forward, even if it means changing direction. And here's the thing. Living with purpose doesn't mean you'll always feel unstoppable. There will be days when you question everything, when progress feels invisible, and when the work seems too heavy to carry. But on those days, your purpose will whisper, "This matters. Keep going." You'll remember that your actions have meaning beyond the discomfort of the moment. You'll see that every small step is part of a bigger story, one that you are writing with your life. Rustin's example also challenges us to think about the kind of legacy we want to leave. Ask yourself, when you're gone, what will people remember about you? Will they say you were always chasing the next burst of excitement? Or will they say you stood for something bigger than yourself? Rustin's name may not have been as widely known during his lifetime as others in the movement, but his fingerprints are all over its greatest achievements. That's the mark of someone who lived with unwavering purpose. You didn't need to be remembered as the star. You wanted to be remembered as someone who made a difference. When you connect your daily actions to a meaningful purpose, even ordinary moments become extraordinary. A phone call, a meeting, an hour of focused work when tied to your why. These moments stack up into something powerful. Over time, they create momentum that no burst of motivation could ever match. Purpose turns the smallest actions into building blocks for something monumental. It's also worth remembering that purpose has a way of inspiring others without you even realizing it. Rustin didn't set out to become a symbol. He set out to do the work. But in doing so, he became a quiet force that motivated countless others to keep pushing forward. Your life can have that same ripple effect. People will see the consistency, the dedication, and the integrity you bring to your mission, and it will spark something in them. That's influence at its purest form, not through loud declarations, but through steadfast example. And here's a truth you can carry with you. You don't need to have all the answers to start living with purpose. Rustin didn't know exactly how the fight for civil rights would unfold when he began, but he knew the values he would not compromise on. He knew the kind of world he wanted to help create. That clarity of vision was enough to guide each decision, each action, each sacrifice. In your own life, you may not have the full picture of where your path will lead, but you can decide today what you stand for and what you will work toward, no matter how long it takes. The difference between motivation and purpose is simple but profound. Motivation is about how you feel right now. Purpose is about who you choose to be for the rest of your life. Motivation fades. Purpose endures. Motivation asks, what can I get today? Purpose asks, what am I building for tomorrow? If you want to live a life that leaves no room for regret, build it on purpose. Let it be the foundation that holds you steady through the highs and lows. When you feel tempted to quit, remember Bayard Rustin working in the shadows, facing prejudice, weathering setbacks, yet never losing sight of why he began. Remember that the greatest victories often belong to those who refuse to walk away, even when no one else is watching. Remember that the path of purpose may not always be easy, but it will always be worth it. And years from now, when you look back, you'll see that your life wasn't defined by the moments you felt unstoppable. It was defined by the moments you kept going when you didn't. That's the power of purpose. That's the kind of drive that doesn't just help you reach your goals, it changes who you are in the process. And when you live like that, you'll never have to wonder what could have been. You'll know with absolute certainty that you gave everything to what mattered most.